Hi, Isabel975 and welcome to PUBG on the Xbox. And after a particularly unsatisfying win on my favourite map in PUBG, I decided it was time to get revenge on these damn bots that are everywhere in the game. Now, I normally don't play for kills, I normally play to win. Revealing my location by constantly shooting bots is not actually a particularly good idea. Driving around like a lunatic chasing bot kills is not a particularly good idea. But I decided in this game to do those things because, yeah, I just thought, well, why not? I'll have a look-see. So I saw a lot of things dropping out of the plane, and I decided to jump with them and get straight on it. Now, today's going to be a long video, but I'm actually going to talk about two subjects that have come up recently. One is very relevant to today. I'm releasing this video on the 1st of April for a reason. As of today, as well as being April Fool's Day, it is also the release of a new law in Scotland, which is probably the most egregious restriction on speech in the UK we've ever seen. Very reminiscent of the law that just passed in Ireland, if not worse than the law that just passed in Ireland. And I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about a report that came out recently looking at how people are in the UK feeling like they can't speak, have to modify their speech, have to restrict what they say because of harassment. Now, I'm going to talk at length. This is political stuff, so if you're not interested in that, then there's plenty of other videos on my channel. However, this is a subject that interests me. I do have some background in legal stuff and a little bit of understanding of law, so I always find it interesting when a new law is brought in that's incredibly vague, especially one that seeks to define stuff and doesn't actually define it. So the bill I'm talking about is the Hate, Crime and Public Order Scotland Bill. This was a bill set about to abolish, this is really weird, this is part of it, it was actually to abolish blasphemy laws by bringing in hate speech laws and de facto blasphemy laws, but it depends what you describe as blasphemy against something other than something else. So I thought, as I'm committing a hate crime against these poor bots, I figured this video would be good background fodder. Also, it can run for a long period of time and I've got a lot to talk about. So what has come in this new hate crime bill? Well, it seeks to be an amalgamation of other hate crime bills and codify a few terms. You have your protected characteristics, which is a standard thing with any law of this nature. Interestingly, there's no male and female listed, so misogyny and misandry aren't technically covered, but I think they come under variations of sex characteristics. I think they try to be as broad as possible in this modern age. Now, there's a raft of new offences that you can commit under this new act, which I find interesting. They're odd because it's how it's perceived by the victim as to whether it's something falls under this or not, which is an odd way of defining a criminal offence, because what someone finds offensive is, not always the same thing, and also defining hate's very difficult. Now, there are protections later in the bill. So there are protections, for example, as an atheist, if I was to criticise religion from an atheist standpoint, there is some protection under the legislation for that. There's some vague protections for people for various things. It is quite odd. That one was quite a rough hate crime on a bot there. But the first offence is stirring up hatred. They don't really define in this bill what they consider hatred to be. Similar to the Irish one, the Irish actually gave an entirely circular definition that hate was hatred, which is very difficult. There's another offence which is interesting, is the fact that you can be culpable of this during a public performance or play. So I really look forward to the next Jimmy Carr gig or Frankie Boyle gig in Scotland. I'm sure there is some protections for comedy, I would hope, but we'll have to see. And again, with this law, it's very vague, very abstract, doesn't even define what hate is. So you get this awkward position where it's how the courts proceed with it that's going to be the difference. How the police and the courts administer this bill is going to really be where it's tested. You know, but at this point we don't know how it's going to be perceived by the courts and by the police themselves. Now, the police weren't keen on the bill when it was being pushed through. The now Prime Minister, well, First Minister of Scotland, was the Justice Minister when this was passing through. So this is a law that he's been pushing all the way through since he was Justice Minister. Now, some people will say, well, why does it matter? This is Scotland, not England. Well, it matters because if the communication reaches Scotland, you can still be prosecuted for it. So yeah, so if you post a offensive comment on X in the UK and the Scottish police get a complaint about it from a Scottish person, you can still be, found guilty under this offence. How that's going to work out, again, we don't know. That's up to the courts to decide. But we get into dodgy territory when they're talking about this. Possession of inflammatory material. We could be talking spicy memes here. We could be talking, I own a copy of the DVD Raw, the Eddie Murphy stand-up. That's got some pretty homophobic comments in it. I'm sure there's a copy of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective lying around this house somewhere. And that's got some quite transphobic stuff in it. Is that now illegal to own copies of it? I need to read into the law fully to find out. But if you're looking to distribute or have people watch that material, it can be considered. So, if I was to post clips from Ace Ventura that some person found offensive on YouTube, for example, that may qualify. So, yeah, we're in the realms of very, very hard to define, difficult laws that honestly, it's down to the courts how they administer this and go forward, because it is so vague. It's really creating a minefield for people. And interestingly, today in the UK, a report came out worrying about people being harassed into not speaking their mind and having restrictions placed on their freedom of speech. So, oh yeah, this guy was a guy. I didn't realise until I alerted them, because that was actually a person. They leaned, they had med kits and medical supplies on them. That usually indicates that was a real person. So the name still had an underscore in it, but the way they leaned, the way they moved, I think that was actually a real person. Not 100% sure, but think it was. I ended up just going with a shotgun. Can be bothered. So yeah, the UK has been accused of having a growing culture of freedom-restricted harassment in the UK, which for the rest of these quotes is just going to appear as the initials for freedom-restricted harassment, just because you'll see there's some statements coming up that are quite long and wordy. Now, what this is talking about is people being afraid to share their public opinions, their opinions in public, private, at work, and things like that. Now, I certainly have in the past had to self-censor myself. I was working for an insurance company. I was on lunch break one day, and because I ran an animal rescue, someone asked me my opinion of halal slaughter for animals. Now, I gave my opinion, my honest and fair opinion, not in any way, shape or form Islamophobic, but my opinion is that halal slaughter is way more barbaric than the normal method of slaughter used in the UK. This is not a controversial view from an animal welfare point of view. One, basically you knock the animal on the head, then cut its throat. You basically stun, then kill. And the other method is you cut its throat while it's live, hanging upside down, and drain it of all blood while it's still alive. Like, it literally hangs there and bleeds out. Now, if you're offered those two methods of being killed, I don't think you're going to take the one where you're hung upside down until your lifeblood's drained away. I think you're going to take the, yeah, bolt gun me in the head, then do whatever you like with me. Now, I expressed that opinion at work, and I was asked to attend a meeting by HR in which I was told not to expose anti-Islamic views in the break room. I mean, the HR person I spoke to was quite understanding when I described exactly what happened, and they basically just said, look, just don't talk religion in the office because it's just not worth the hassle. And that is the state of the UK at this moment in time. Is there's so many subjects and so many minefields that companies do not want you talking about at work, even if it's relevant, like culturally relevant conversations, even if it's current topics of the day, even if it's, you know, stuff in the news. They don't want you talking about it because it can lead to HR nightmares for them if they get complaints. So we end up with this position, which is 85% of the public believe freedom-restricting harassment currently occurs in the UK, with 60% believing this problem is worse than 5 years ago, and 44% respondents having witnessed it online. So this is people expressing their views and then getting piled on for those views, even when those views are kind of accepted and established norms, even when the views are expressed by mainstream political parties and aren't hateful in any way, shape or form. People are not willing to say things because they're too scared they will get absolutely piled upon and harassed. And we see it all the time. Now, I've often said there's not much I admire about America, but the freedom of speech amendment is one of the things I do admire. Now, I actually am not someone who's a free speech absolutist. I believe there is hate speech. If you incite to violence or make threats, you know, that's something that should be looked at. However, I spent way too long trying to shoot this bot. This is the danger of bot hunting, is you end up stationary shooting a bot, like just focused on trying to kill the bot, and at the moment I'm stationary and anyone else can just pick me off, and I'm making noise by firing rounds at a bot. And I don't know why, but I think I'm hitting an invisible wall somewhere in that, because I'm swearing these should hit, and you'll see how easily I take out the next one. But yeah, it was like there was an invisible wall stopping me shooting Luffy 1909. Yeah, that's really a person. And then you see a second one, top of the head, bush, no invisible wall. But yeah, so we've ended up in the UK with a situation like this, where people are actually scared of expressing their views in public to such a horrific extent that we have 76% of the public are self-censoring themselves. People are literally trying to modify what they say out in public because of these hate speech laws. And this new hate crime bill from Scotland actually covers you in your own home. They have said if you're having a conversation with your wife and your child thinks that it's hateful, you can be prosecuted. If a neighbour overhears you and finds it hateful, you can be prosecuted. So even expressing your own views in your own home now is a dangerous thing in Scotland. That's just insane to me. It just doesn't, it's not an environment that I really want to live in. Now, I personally think that people should be free to have really abhorrent opinions and views. It's totally their responsibility if they have them, because you're not defeating hate speech by outlawing or banning it. All you're doing is pushing it underground. It's not going to stop the hate. You're just creating more division and hatred. I feel this law in Scotland is going to be weaponized just to try and shut down arguments, rational conversations about difficult subjects. It's just going to be used as a beat stick, and people are just going to try and beat each other over the head with it. Reporting people for crimes vexatiously. It's going to lead to more problems than it solves. Also, these sort of laws don't stop hate speech as far as I can tell. And when you've got people censoring themselves and afraid to talk and live freely in a country, it's worrying, it's alarming. If people aren't allowed to express their own opinions in their own homes, in their own country, that's just going to really just not be good for the society. We have to, as far as I'm concerned, have freedom of speech, because if you don't have freedom of speech, you can't tackle difficult subjects, you cannot address difficult subjects, you cannot have rational conversations, you cannot seek for resolution. If you're bound up in knots and too scared to speak, you're not going to get anywhere. It's ludicrous. And like with my example, if I can't have a rational conversation as to why I don't feel halal slaughter should be the primary slaughter method in the UK, then it's very, very difficult to raise animal welfare issues based on the back of that. Would be a very difficult conversation to have, but it shouldn't be an impossible conversation to have. And putting barriers between people having sensible conversations about animal welfare issues because I might offend someone's sensibilities is ridiculous. But yeah, and also, as I've always said, I don't think you stop hatred by making it illegal. I think you stop hatred by bringing it out in the open and showing it for what it is, which is stupidity and bigotry. If you can't defeat someone's bigoted views, I spent ages shooting this, but like Duck Hunt. Oh, actually, no, that was better than I thought. But anyway, I actually lost at this point because not playing the zone and being a dumbass meant that I did end up running across a human. This guy who went on to win the game, he ended up killing a bot as the final kill. So, he actually got 1 kill on a human, and I got 1 kill on a human out of 20. But anyway, let me know what you think of the discussion in the comments down below. I'm going to leave it there. I think I've said everything I want to say. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think.